so hard because you have time gaps. There's a lot of luck. You can sting a ball, hit a line drive right at shortstop, lose the game. Um, one of the things I do when I do a mental skills clinic is I have like somewhere in a paper bag here, I have like a couple hundred pennies, and I spray paint some of them red, some of them green, and we'll have them draw. So they'll have a percentage, like maybe it's 40% green pennies and 60% red pennies, representing 40% is a hit, 60% is an out. And we'll do draws. We'll do a couple different times, and they'll see how their batting average changes just randomly. Like, hey, I hit, I got hit 240 this draw, and then I hit 480 this draw, and like nothing was different.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I am your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. And whether you've tuned in to elevate your mindset, your game, or just your day, you are in the right place. My guest this episode is a coach, author, speaker, and creator. His YouTube channel recently exceeded over 100,000 subscribers. And through his work, he emphasizes the importance of meeting athletes where they are, where coaching encompasses both technical skills and emotional support. Please welcome to the Elev8 podcast, my friend, Dan Blewett. Welcome, great to have you.
Hey Tyler, how are you?
I'm well. How are you doing today?
I'm good here in DC. The weather's a little less outrageous. It's been a hot summer here. I really like the heat, especially as a kid growing up playing baseball. You get comfortable. Like August it's fine. If it's 100, as long as I can play baseball, it's fine. But man, when 40 starts creeping up and it's 98 and 80% humidity, man, wears you down. But it's beautiful right now, and DC's an amazing city in the summer. So yeah, things are good here.
Love it. This time of year, some of those same weather conditions give me deja vu of going back to football camp and stretching in the wet grass, start the day. But the smells and sights and sounds of sport. Love it. It's great to have you. Would love for you to share a little bit about your journey, and for those that aren't familiar with you, a little bit about your work if they haven't come across it on YouTube, but learn how you went from ball player to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I am in a lot of ways a little bit like Forrest Gump. I just kind of do something that gives me energy that I feel like I'm good at, um, and I just kind of dive in. So after baseball, leaving baseball was hard for me. I played professionally for 6 years in independent leagues, and then a shoulder injury ended my career. So I knew I wanted to write a book because my career was pretty crazy, very up and down, and had a lot of injuries and a lot of comebacks. And so I wrote the book, and I knew like a big publisher wasn't going to pick it up. No one, you don't sell memoirs when you're a nobody, right? And totally fine with that. The book was more for me than anyone else. But I said, all right, I want to let people know about this book, and maybe if they get to know me, that will support that, right? So I started making more videos on YouTube, and I always had a YouTube channel from my time owning a baseball academy, and we would just sort of like put stuff up there. We, film an interesting video, we put it up there so our clients could access it. It was more just like a holding tank. And then today, I just actually crossed over the 100,000 subscriber threshold for my baseball channel. I have a softball channel that's at about 45,000. And like subscriber numbers aren't important to me. It's never been like this validating thing. But it's cool to see that like a lot of people tune in from all over the world, and I just get to teach and give back to the community. And the interesting thing about that is I've just continued to find more obvious needs that people have. And for me, my brand on the web as a YouTube coach, I do clinics in person. I've written 4 books, and I travel around and basically just am like a mental skills baseball, softball coach. But I continue to find people and who are looking for stuff that a lot of the higher level coaches miss, because once you play at a high level, you kind of like are stuck there, right? And you forget that, oh yeah, if I, like had a kid who's 6 years old, it's not obvious that they should do this, or it's not obvious like how to teach them this skill, right? Something that I took for granted that I learned many years ago, and then I haven't had to teach kids that in so long because, my baseball academy served a little bit, more intermediate and advanced level, right? So as I wade through YouTube comments, I respond to like so many of those. I just continue to learn about what parents and coaches are struggling with, and I try to like be adaptive to those needs and create videos that help people fill those gaps in knowledge. Because I know if I don't do it, a lot of times those videos just won't get made. And so, there's a lot of purpose in that, and so I really enjoy what I do, and I'm really lucky to make a living as a quote unquote coach, influencer, instructor. And yeah, I have a lot of time on my hands and get to give back in a way that's meaningful to me.
Yeah. Talk about, you brought up the book and about you made the statement, more for me than in the beginning, perhaps. Uh, is there something you learned about yourself in creating that first book?
Well, so I've written four. My first was actually a pitching manual, and that one is called Pitching Isn't Complicated. It's just basic instruction for pitching. It's got a lot of strategy stuff in there, and that book was born out of my second Tommy John. I was home in that winter or that summer rehabbing. So me and my business partner at my baseball academy were like, well, since I'm home, we can do camps, we can do some other things that might have been more difficult when it was only him. And so I started outlining all of the things that we wanted to teach in camp and all these different things we want our instructors to teach. And I was like, you know what? If I have these 20 topics, if I write 10 pages about each topic, that's like a book. So that's what I did for that first one. And then, but like the one we're talking about, my memoir, which is my second book, I just had a really hard time letting go of the game. And I made a quick TikTok about this the other day that we talk in the sports world with Positive Coaching Alliance. We're both Positive Coaching Alliance trainers. We talk about trying to help kids find balance in their life and, sample different sports, do all these different things so that people are
Yeah.
well-rounded, right? But many of us as athletes aren't really that well-rounded. I had other hobbies. Like I couldn't just do baseball 24/7, especially as a pitcher. Like your arm only has so many bullets. But I still was like mentally, emotionally 100% baseball. Like I just really didn't care about anything else, like not in a significant way. Like, yeah, I worked on
Yeah.
cars in my garage. I enjoyed that. It would kill time. I did lots of other activities and things, but none of them were like, I'd burn all that to the ground just, for baseball. So when I retired, I had two Tommy John surgeries along the way, but a shoulder injury ended my career. And then I just like woke up one day and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm not going to the dugout. I don't have, off-season prep to get ready for next season. I don't have anything to look forward to. The thing that I look forward to for 22 years has now just been stripped from my life, and it's like I've been like just like kicked out the back door, right? So I wrote this book, and it was interesting piecing it together because during, I guess like my last 4 years of pro ball, I had this baseball academy business that I would leave every spring, and my business partner would run it for the summer in my absence, and then I'd come back. And I continued to get, we had more and more clients every year, and I had close relationships with these people. So they were like, "Hey, Dan, like keep in touch during your season, right?" And so I just couldn't possibly text everyone back, and that's exhausting, and people don't want to be intrusive. So I said, "Hey, I'm going to make an email newsletter just for people that I know, the people that I'm close with, where I'll just send out email, my Dan weekly baseball email about how my career is going, right?" So I did that. And when I retired, it was really interesting sort of record to wade back through because the way I explain this is I kind of had like three different perspectives looking back at my career. A, it was like how I personally felt about it. Um, B, there was how I felt about it looking back as I went back through all of,
Sure.
my whole story. So like in the moment and then, the 30,000 foot view, which now there's an 80 foot thousand view now. And then, but then there was this third perspective, which was the letters that I wrote back to all my people, where and that had an interesting dynamic because I had a lot of arm problems, and there were lots of times where I was like really scared that I couldn't make my next start because my arm felt so bad, but I wasn't going to tell the coaches because just like for reasons we won't get into. Um, and I did a lot of journaling on my bus rides, and so as I went back through these emails, I saw myself lying to my people, saying like, yeah, this is just like normal stuff, like arm stuff. Like, yeah, my arm hurts a little bit, but like I'm gonna get through it just fine. Like that was like mostly a lie. it was like the rosy picture, not like a malicious lie, but like the rosy picture I would say to someone else rather
Yeah.
than how I actually felt inside. So I knew how I felt in those hard moments. And then I knew how I portrayed them to my people back home, being more optimistic and more positive and like rose-colored lenses. And then I knew, like, looking back on the whole thing. So it was interesting putting that whole book together, seeing these just different perspectives of really just from myself. So
Yeah.
it helped me let go. It was very cathartic. And I didn't realize as I wrote it, because, 3 or 4 drafts later, the book became a lot more about letting go of the game and grieving my identity than when I first started writing it. When I first started writing it, it's like this was my crazy baseball story. Let's go chapter by chapter. This is like what happened. But then as I was doing it in real time and grieving myself and the loss of, this whole thing that I'd done, it became more about that, which was interesting. So each revision, kind of like the subject of the book, changed. So
Yeah.
so yeah, long-winded answer, but it was a really interesting personal project for me and really, really therapeutic in moving on from my career as an athlete.
Yeah. But we also know athletes sometimes need some sort of escape, some sort of reprieve from their sport. Can you talk about that challenge and that dynamic of being able to kind of stay at least mentally sharp and mentally well by also meeting the demands of high level competition?
Yeah, I think about balance. It's tricky because I don't know that I would do anything different going back to my career personally. I think the way we handle a lot of our downtime sometimes is the way that we should have handled it. I don't know. I think there's a lot of times where we can go back and think about, okay, I could have learned this skill in my free time, or I could have done more of this hobby or whatever it is, but sometimes it just isn't that way. I think one of the big things I would urge young athletes to do is just meet more people outside of your bubble. And this was like an aha moment for me when I moved here to DC finally, because I lived in Bloomington, Illinois, which is where I had my baseball academy for a couple years after I retired from baseball, kind of packaging my life up and then moving back home to the East Coast. And when I got here, I kind of realized that like I never really made, and this was also sort of unique to me being in minor league baseball and then also just like in my baseball academy as soon as I got home. So I was very much like in my bubble. But when I got here in DC, when I made my first friend in the real world, I was like, all my friends are sports people, or they're like a sports dad that I become close with at the academy, or like I don't know anyone in the real world. And like I started meeting people who are very different from me, at least in what they do day to day and like their life experience, like growing up just in high school and then going to college, getting a good job, working in politics or in a nonprofit or in the accounting world, whatever it is. And it's just like I felt for a long time really awkward, not knowing what to talk about. Like I have no idea what your day is like. And I don't, and like being in the dugout or on the football sidelines, like the way you talk to each other is very unlike the real world, right? We could be much more
Yeah.
crass and like you don't want to say the wrong thing and you just like don't know how to relate to people. So I think if I could go back, I think trying to find friends, and this is the way it is in college sports. You show up as a freshman and like you have your friends built in, right? It's your football team, it's your basketball team, it's
Yeah.
your lacrosse team, it's your baseball team, and you don't have much time to be around other people. You don't have go time to like really get to know someone, who's a different major than you. You don't have to go time to go all these
Yeah.
clubs or like do all these different things and really branch out and like interact with your like hang out with your classmates that you might get to know because you always have a baseball thing. You always have practice, or you're just like, okay, we have a day off, so we're all going to hang out and like hang out with the lacrosse girls or the soccer girls or whatever. So it's just like that bubble world. Then you get sent to the real world, and you're just really unprepared, I think, socially in a lot of ways that people don't talk about. And I think when you meet more people doing things outside of your sports bubble, that I think can really help expand like what other hobbies people have. Like if you look around my apartment, I have a lot of houseplants. That's like I guess a hobby of mine. I
Right.
didn't know like sport athletes don't have houseplants. That's not a thing that we do. But when you meet other people, you like go over their house and you're like, oh, they play the guitar or like they have houseplants. They have really interesting like they love design or they do different things that athletes do, right? So I think just being exposed to other people can help the aha moments go off where it's like, oh, cool, she's really passionate about this thing that's completely outside the sports world. He's really passionate about this thing, and you just start to tag along and you follow the rabbit hole with I think with other people. So for me, I think going back, I wish I could have done more of that, like met more people from my philosophy major in college, like maybe spent some time to get to know them as classmates and my peers, because I just never did. And that might have really expanded me and helped me find, like, okay, even though this is who I am at my core, I can be a nerdy philosophy person. I can be a nerdy psychology person. I can learn what other people do. And I think that can help you understand like what the real world looks like a little bit better, and then maybe find some balance that way.
Yeah, I like that because I think when I kind of felt that identity thing too, it was the next thing was, oh, I'm limited by that. Instead
Yeah.
of, going out and reaching out and finding those experiences, like you mentioned. Uh,
Hmm.
in your baseball journey, was there a coach or someone that kind of impacted you more than others that kind of stands out when you maybe went through those reflections and building the book?
Yeah, and I'll share this one because I thought of you, Tyler. Actually, on Saturday I was in Nationals Park doing a PCA talk on positive motivation with youth baseball coaches from the area here in DC, and we started a conversation about yelling. And
Mm.
when we were at Trainer Institute, you had a really good point where you shared a story about a parent said like, "Oh, coach yells at my kid all the time," and you asked them. I'll let you tell it real quick, and I'll jump back in. But
If I'm recalling it right, I think it was, were they yelling? Was it volume? It had something to do with volume or direction of, you know, what they're saying.
yeah, which is a great point because, oh, they yelled at my kid. Well, did they just raise their voice to get them to move to a different position, or did they actually like berate your kid, or was it like, there's like, and so we had this big discussion about yelling, right? And a lot of people had a lot of different. It was a really good round table kind of thing where people were like, I raise my voice in a positive way. I raise my voice with intensity to like wake kids up sometimes, but I'm never like yelling at them. We always think it's like a negatively connotated thing, right? So anyway, one of my biggest, most important coaches was my strength coach in college. And he yelled at me, like, Blewett, get it right. Get your knees out on that squat. You need to be doing more weight. You're not working hard enough. All these, like, he just singled me out over and over and over and over and over to the point where it was like, it felt like I was the only person that got yelled at in the weight room. And but there were moments when I had my really like rough patches, like, you know, my first weekend away, my sophomore year, I was our 4/5 starter after being like a walk on and being the ninth or 10th best pitcher on the team. I really had a chance to like crack the starting rotation, and I pitched absolutely terrible. Just it was a really crushing disappointment. And I come back and I just kind of like sulk into the weight room, and he can see it, and he's like, what's going on? How'd your weekend go? I know this is an important weekend for you. And I was like, I walked bases loaded. I got pulled. It was embarrassing. I pitched like a scared child. And he's like, and this was, I think, really the first time he'd given me a compliment that I could really remember. But he just like really picked me up off the floor in that moment. Said like, like you've worked so hard, and like the final chapters for you have not yet been written. And I got back to work, so what I learned with him was, yeah, he was relentless and he was on my back and he was tough and he yelled. Um, he wasn't abusive. He never like made fun of me. He wasn't like, but he was like, he was a football guy. He was a old school football kind of guy, right? But he never let me slow down, and he really made me tough, and he made me like, he pushed me to my limit to work harder and harder and harder. And years later, I was on campus coming back to visit him because I mean, we're so close, and I just was, we caught up, and then he had a team he had to train, so I just like worked out in the weight room. And one of the girls from a different sport, who I remember her, I don't know that I knew her, but she was like, "Hey, you played baseball, right?" I was like, "Yeah." You were, volleyball or whatever sport. She's like, "Yeah, you were the guy who was always covered in sweat." And I was like, I love that that's my legacy to people that didn't
Uh,
know me. But like that was his legacy. Like he pushed me. I could never finish a workout because he pushed me so hard to like I was killing myself with weight. And so it slows you down when you're just like really trying to maximize how much you're doing on, sets of 8 on Bulgarian split squats, right? If you're really pushing yourself, those make you wish you were dead, kind of.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but so like obviously today kids they want gentler coaches, right? Kids today are more sensitive. We have to approach them different. And I've had some very like empathetic, kind. I've had coaches on all the spectrums, as I'm sure you have too, Tyler. But he was like the person that I needed in that moment. He
Yeah.
toughened me up to like this level that I think really helped me endure, these two Tommy John surgeries that I had later, and a really brutal coach in my fourth year in pro ball, who was the only time I ever wanted to quit because of him. And I think his like tutelage in my college weight room with him being so hard on me was really, really valuable. So there's just like lots of different ways, as we try to motivate the community to be really encouraging and like check in with your athletes and to have all these really high level soft skills and to treat athletes really well. There's still lots of different ways to get the best from kids. And for me personally, like I wouldn't take his tactics as like my default, but like he got the best out of me at that moment. But he also laid the foundation of like the fact that he really cared about me. And and I knew that I think from the get-go, where he was always on my back because I had kind of pledged to him like I want to be a pro player and I don't know how, so show me the way. And he did, you know.
Like that's a great story. Uh, you brought up being the influencer, YouTuber kind of coach role you have. Young people, when you get an audience of them, when you ask them what they want to do, there's a large portion that that career path idea for some reason surfaces. Uh, I'm sure you've had that conversation, maybe with some young athletes. How do I do that, Dan? How do you get so many subscribers? What is something that in that situation you share with young people? And then what is something that, in going into the kind of digital platform that you've learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think I never wanted to be any of the things that I've become except for a baseball player. I never had
Yeah,
aspirations of being a coach or a strength coach or anything. I just found that I was good at it. So that was like, well, this makes sense. I can teach young people the things that I'm good at, that I like doing, that give me purpose. And YouTube started slowly just the same way. I just started, after I wrote my second book, I wanted it to sell. So I wanted people to get to know me. I was trying to sell video instruction, like online pitching courses, and I figured if I made free videos and they got to know me, then maybe they'd buy one, right? And that has proven to be true, but all that was a slow process. And I think the problem with the web now is it's all entertainers, and I am very much not an entertainer. I'm not that kind of influencer. And I don't really like the word influencer because really I'm an educator. Like I teach
for
people,
sure.
and my videos are not entertainment based. Like I'm here to tell you like the real thing that you're looking for. And so that's why I focus way more on YouTube than I do Instagram or TikTok. I usually just cut clips from my videos and put them there to share them.
Yeah.
Because my speed is, if you want to learn how to throw a changeup, I'm going to make a really good, thorough, detailed video that's clear and concise and is age appropriate and is simple enough to understand for a dad who didn't play baseball, or for a mom who didn't play baseball, wants to help her son or her daughter, throw a changeup. So like that's my niche. And so it's like if you want to learn this really, like I'm here to like just shorten the learning curve for you. But I'm not gonna do backflips, and I'm not gonna like make a bunch of like weird cuts and have weird sound and do all these things that are really just more entertainment based. And like, is that gonna leave me behind at some point? Maybe, but most of what I do is pretty evergreen, and like parents are always gonna want someone to like be straight with them about their kids' sports journey, and that's what I am. And I think that's part of my brand, where everyone just has to, if you want to be prominent on the web, you have to find out what your voice is and what your message is. And that just takes also a lot of time. Like when I look back at my older videos, I'm less concise than I am today. My audio and video quality has gotten a lot better. Like this is my background. Like I invest in good equipment. This is filmed on a real camera, flowing through Zoom, and this podcast mic, all that stuff. Like it's important to me to put out a good product, but the biggest thing is just how do I communicate? And any person that wants to start a journey on the web has to figure out like what am I here to provide? And you might not know, and if you don't know, that's totally fine. You just start and just share something authentic. But too often people want to like cut the line, so they want to be like this influencer, or they want to do what this person's doing in that person's way. And it's great to learn from each other, but at the end of the day, like, are you being, anytime I'm trying something new that stretches me, I always come back to like, does this feel authentic, and does this feel like me, or does it feel like I'm trying too hard, or this is not the format for that? And I have some projects now that I want to get on video that I just like haven't figured out how to do it in a way that I think really comes off as authentic. And so I think it always just goes back to that because if you're being someone that you're not, and this is what you're doing every day, it's not going to work very well. You're going to get burned out and you're just going to feel like a phony and and people are going to figure that out. So
Sure.
a lot of people have a wonderful stuff to share and a lot of people could be really, really good on the web if only they had the courage to get started, number one, and to stick with it, number two, because it's a long journey. I mean, yeah, look back on my old stuff and I'm like, man, I sucked even 3 or 4 years ago compared to today because you're always getting better. But like, also you had less people watching, so it's like, who cares? It's like playing to an empty audience, an empty auditorium 5 years ago. So if you can get past the initial stuff, just do it and share what you have in your heart in an authentic way, and just go with it.
Yeah. Feel very much the same way the early episodes of this.
Hmm.
They're like, oh, but it's I think those whether it's sports or it's the reps and meaningful ones, you really
Yeah.
start to apply yourself and like you said, get into kind of that growth challenge zone. Uh, Being a coach in a dugout and then the dynamic you do, and obviously you talked about the academies and the coaching and the clinics. What brings you the most joy in your work?
I just feel energy when it's something that solves a good problem for someone else. And like as an example, like I'm not an expert on slow pitch softball. I play slow pitch softball because it's fun. It's been a really great outlet for me and played it for 3 years. Obviously, most of your baseball skills transfer, right? Like if you're going to play flag football, your football skills transfer to flag football, right? But there's also some nuances of the game that might be just a little bit different. So anyway, I started making some slow pitch content, right? Mostly on hitting, and I get a lot of blowback actually from like slow pitch players, which is like, this isn't exactly right. I'm like, look, my audience is um, very beginners because I play like a co-ed league, not a high level league, and there's some beginners who just like don't know how to stay in the batter's box that well, and like little things that would go a long way, but they don't want to ask, and then people feel embarrassed, and so I'm like,
Sure.
I know if I see 3 players from each team who could just use basic like footwork when they after they field a ground ball, or just like basic tips for standing in the batter's box that would improve their power, their consistency. I'm gonna make that video and help them with that. So like that's just an example of something recently that's given me a lot of energy because it's just like it's helping someone in just like a new format that I enjoy. But at the same time, the internet life is kind of lonely. And that's why I love doing the PCA talks with Positive Coaching Alliance because I just want to be in front of people. I used to have a baseball academy, obviously. So I was, 3 to 9 p.m., like with, kids and the couple adult clients that we had. And just like I enjoyed the interaction and like the shared purpose with other people. So I try to find a balance. Like I do clinics. I'll be back in Hong Kong working with the Little League organization there in the fall, and I'm going out to give a talk in Chicago in a couple weeks. I'll actually be in Denver next week with Nicole Trimboli.
Yeah, there we
Very
go.
quick trip. We're filming as many YouTube videos as we possibly can. She's got tons of softball expertise, but just like it's always a balance, and I think a lot of digital nomads and digital creators feel the same way, where it can be just like very lonely. So I try to get out and interact with people as much as I can, but just I just follow the rabbit hole, and sometimes that's in person stuff, and sometimes it's digital, and I just feel like when I can teach and share stuff that helps people, that's what gives me energy. That's like the underlying foundation of all of it.
Love it. Well, recording this episode gives me energy. I always love connecting with people, especially people like you, Dan. You brought up something that's a soft spot in my coaching world that I like. You mentioned in the discussion about the book journaling. Can you talk a
Hmm.
little bit about how athletes and even coaches can use journaling as a tool in our toolbox?
Yeah, that's a good. I'm glad you pounced on that because the big thing for me was I didn't know I was journaling. So like in high school, I was always just good in English class. Like English, I just didn't have to go home and study at all. I could just like write a good paper and I'd get a good grade. So it was
Oh,
awesome, you know. But
not me. That
then
was not me.
I'll thank my parents just for the genes. But in in towards the end of my college career, I interned with a personal trainer named Nick Tuminello, and he's like, "You should start a blog. The internet is happening, and even though you're just 21, like just write what you know. So I did. I followed his advice. Anyway, 5 years later, I was writing fitness articles for bodybuilding.com, tnation.com, and I wrote fitness articles during my first couple years in pro ball for extra money. And minor leaguers are famously underpaid. So on the bus, I always had my laptop and I'd be working on a next article. And then as I started having just lots of arm problems, I just started like writing down my feelings sometimes because I knew I didn't really want to tell my teammates about it. And I didn't really think about that as journaling, but it's exactly what it was, right? And I have like I have like old Word documents about like different moments in time when I was like worried about making my next start or this or that. And I think that was really helpful because, like men are not great with discussing our feelings, right? It's better now than it's ever been. Like mental health is very much in the public eye, and that's wonderful. But still, especially as like, you're a smart, successful former, college football player, um, I've had really privileged life, right? Even with like the death of my father last year, my dad was an amazing man. I had an amazing father, and I've cried on the shoulders of some people who had really terrible fathers. And it's just like it doesn't matter where you are in life, you can have some really amazing privileges that you lose, and you can feel guilty grieving these great things that you had. Like I felt really guilty grieving my baseball career. It's like, oh, boo hoo, I don't get to play pro baseball anymore. Like, wow, that's not a real world problem, right? And so like writing and journaling, stuff like that, it can help you sort through your training. It can serve lots of really important functions. My dad was a prolific journaler. He wrote down like so many, we have like tons of notebooks of his running workouts where he was just trying to find patterns because he was a scientist about his running. He was an amazing runner. That wasn't my way of doing it, but I think it's really valuable. And I think for me, it was just more like my personal therapy, trying to work through my problems and vent a little bit. But how did you use journaling in your career? How do you help people? Or
I didn't really have it in my career. I think, it's more of the hold it in and tough it out.
mm-hmm,
Um, I think I probably being in the training room, I think we had some good athletic trainers that just had a good listening ear that at least had some space to kind of vent.
they're saints, aren't they? The athletic trainers.
Yeah, I think some that just probably nodded their head and listened. Yeah, they're like therapists sometimes, but whether it's frustrations that you're off the field and those kinds of things. But I found now I have stacks of journals. I think over the years, and I think from in my coaching and my personal life is one. I think you brought up the patterns, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something. I think one. I had another guest. She talked about journaling. It was this idea. She called it writing a rut. She'd have her athletes do raw, unfiltered thoughts, right? Just kind of dumping it all out there. And so I think that kind of format's been useful just to kind of like maybe when I'm overwhelmed and stressed out, just to throw thoughts on a paper and then
Yeah.
take account for what they are from there. Because sometimes once they're out, you can evaluate them a little bit different when they're just swirling in your head,
Mm-hmm.
attached to other things. And so that format, and then I think just very big into I think gratitude. I think I try to do that on a daily basis, and just um, yeah, there's research and overwhelming studies, and think just spending some time and intention around that um, is huge. And so uh, yeah, I think it's a great tool, and I think if you can find a place to just serve yourself with it, I think.
Well, I'm not gonna let you off the hook yet. What is your actual Like, do you have a little journal, like a pocket size? Do you have a big one?
Um,
Like, is it every day? Is it every morning? Is it five
yeah,
minutes? Is it
I
like,
do.
what do you got?
Yeah, I do. So what I do a day every day in my journal right now, and I think it changes and flows. I used to be really big in just doing gratitude journal every morning. I think I have done that habit for a long time, and then kind of now I wake up and set a few words of intention, about 2 to 4 words of intention that I want to live out that day. Then I write a short few sentences or paragraph of gratitude. Um, and then sometimes in the morning or sometimes later in the day, if I'm feeling, I don't know, if there's not stuff surfacing, I'll do just maybe more that is more the raw, unfiltered thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually try to end that brain dump with something steer me forward from those thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And then
And that's
Do you burn them periodically or?
no, I've kept them, and I think when I've encouraged athletes too, I think, um, man, it's hard to sometimes the way you listen to an old podcast or look at an old video or you pull out an old journal. But I think
Hmm.
that's what's been most powerful is to see that growth. Is I think as an athlete, those patterns and those things you go through to really document, because I think when you're, it's like we talked about before, when you're wired into this go, 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 not much life balance pouring into your sport, it's hard to see these areas of growth. You
Hmm.
know, the and our strength coaches we spend a lot of time with, sometimes they're great because they're just wired into the micro PRs of every day we can get out of ourselves. And so when we can start to document that ourselves and even like flip back a month and be like, look what you're doing a month ago. Look what you were
Yeah.
talking about 2 months ago. I
Hmm.
think that is where I've found the most empowerment is not having it and then going back to it when I might have self-doubt.
Yeah, no, I like that. I appreciate you sharing that because I know it's easy for you as the host here to be like, just real
No, I
kick it
appreciate.
back to me. But like, yeah, I mean, everyone's got a different method, and it's cool to hear you lay it out like that. So yeah. Plus, don't you just love buying new journals? I don't know if you like go to
I,
different brands, but
I do.
um,
I
yeah,
was
it's fun.
in one I used. I think I think yeah, you have to do what serves you and kind of you don't change maybe and how you do
Hmm.
things. And so one I use James Clear has a journal that you can buy. If
Hmm.
anybody knows his habit thing, and it has like a habit thing in the back and journal space you can construct in the front.
Hmm.
That was one I used. I think I ran through like 3 years of those, and now I'm kind
Yeah.
of like, what do I've moved some of my habit tracking to digital and just went
Hmm.
yeah. So you got to do what's I think right for you. But go explore it.
Yeah.
I think is the thing. And then you might look back at it and think there's stuff worthy of a book someday. Or if you become a
Hmm.
writer, you can be. How was I feeling 8 years ago when I went through that as a rookie?
Yeah,
um,
for sure.
and you have those kind of things that you can share, and I'm sure you pull out and help other people with um, parts of your past that you've conquered. Uh, I wanted to get your baseball input on, um, the sport is, often wrapped in numerical, statistical hardships. I'll say, I don't like to say failures, their opportunities, but it can create a lot of doubt, a lot of question. People say stick to the process, especially in the grind of baseball. What's one way that when you catch young athletes maybe getting frustrated with, a short slump or a game or two or a 0 for 5 kind of thing, to focus on that reps in the bigger picture of baseball when it can be statistically challenging to look at?
Yeah, baseball is one of the worst sports mentally. It's so hard because you have time gaps. There's a lot of luck. You can sting a ball, hit a line drive right at shortstop, lose the game. Um, one of the things I do when I do a mental skills clinic is I have like somewhere in a paper bag here, I have like a couple hundred pennies, and I spray paint some of them red, some of them green, and we'll have them draw. So they'll have a percentage, like maybe it's 40% green pennies and 60% red pennies, representing 40% is a hit, 60% is, an out. And we'll do draws. We'll do a couple different times, and they'll see how their batting average changes just randomly. Like, hey, I hit, I got hit 240 this draw, and then I hit 480 this draw, and like nothing was different. And I think it takes a long time. That's just one way of helping it click, because especially in youth sports, you play small sample sizes, like 12 game season in little league or something, and it's like you have one bad game or two line drives are caught, it takes off 100 points of your batting average, and kids think they suck, right? And then their confidence goes with it. So for me, one of the biggest things in my last couple of years, I was two Tommy Johns in. I was getting older. I shouldn't have been better in those last couple of years, but I had my best statistical seasons of my life in my last 3 years after my second elbow surgery. And really, it was just that I really had developed a very strong sense of self where I knew what good pitching felt like and looked like, and it was irrespective of the outcome, right? I had games where I was like really shaky and I got good outcomes. I had games where I didn't get good outcomes, gave up a run as a reliever or whatever, and I felt like I threw the ball really well and I felt like I executed fine, and that's just how the game goes. And so I think good coaches really help nurture kids along and just be like settle down. I thought you took good swings today. You had good at bats. You were 0 for 3. It's not that big of a deal. We're going to be out there tomorrow. The only thing that matters is what's your routine like between now and next game, right? You talk to any high level player, they talk about routine, routine, routine until they're blue in the face. But really, you just lean on your routine. You try to bring things down to the bite-sized present moment, right? One, pick a good pitch, put your best swing on it, right? As a pitcher, the next pitch is the only pitch you can control. And, it's easier said than done to focus on that, but the more repetition you can help them get as a coach and just see like, hey, when they have a good game and they have 2 hits that were just tricklers through the infield, point that out to, hey, look, remember, today you were 2 for 3 and you didn't hit the ball that hard, right? Last week you were 0 for 4 and you stung the ball twice. Today's just a good example, right? Like, be happy you're 2 for 3 today. Like, you deserved it. The universe rights wrongs, right? Like, that's part of your batting average too. You earned it. But just let's stay level, right? Don't get too low and don't get too high, right? Just keep working, focus on the process and being here. Just that little, again, pick out a good pitch, put a good swing on it. That's your job. You just do that one time, one up at a time, and you piece together a good season. But yeah, it's hard helping kids understand sample sizes and how they relate to statistics and just getting them to really help that sink in over time.
Sure. And I think, yeah, when we're younger, those sample sizes feel small, short
Hmm.
seasons versus
Yeah.
you don't have 162 games. We have 16 or 8 or 10 when we're
Yeah.
starting out sometimes. So
Hmm.
um, I love that penny exercise you brought up. I think you could, do that with the ratio with quarterbacks.
Yeah, probably.
To control what you can control, and you're still going to have drops and good plays and penalties and all those
Hmm.
kind of things.
Yeah.
Um, which like they changed in football now. If you throw an incompletion before half, if it's a long bomb, it doesn't go against you.
Wow.
So now that they're changing that, now it doesn't even go against your QB rating. But
Interesting.
I like that visual that you can give people about how the day goes. One question as we wrap up, if I handed over a magic wand to you, Dan, and tomorrow all the athletes out there and student athletes would wake up with a skill empowered within them per your magic wand. But what is the thing you'd want athletes to wake up empowered with tomorrow?
The ability to stop comparing themselves with the internet.
Mm,
I don't know if
go
that's
on.
one skill, but I just think it's really hard today to be a kid because anytime you're succeeding and maybe, when kids succeed today, they want to maybe share it on social media, right? They kind of just that's a little bit of the culture, not everyone, but as soon as you share one thing, there's a kid 2 years younger than you, 4 states over, who's way better, right? If you Baseball is easy to quantify. You hit a new milestone as a 14-year-old, you throw 80 miles per hour, which is amazing at that age. There's a 14-year-old somewhere on Perfect Game or Prep Baseball Reports thing throwing 92 miles per hour, right? I just think it's really hard to feel good about the little wins and the slow, steady progress that's so important to being a successful athlete. And I just think social media paves over so much of that. I think it'd be really hard for me and many of us from with our gray beards to live in today's world with all the pressure to feel just successful, right? Because recruiting videos, all that are such a big part of life, and comparing yourself to others is just always in your face. So if I could give them one skill, the magic wand, it'd be the ability to just like tune that out and be proud of themselves and to keep plugging away irrespective of all the other noise that they find on social media.